Welcome, Divine Hearts. Thank you for joining us again this week. This week, I have a very bright and beautiful light keeper joining us again. She is Judith Kusel, and she is a cosmic librarian. She accesses higher wisdom and knowledge, and she shares this wisdom and knowledge so generously through all of her work and her posts. And most recently, she has been called to teach the teachings of the White Flame of Illumination once more, bringing this wisdom and knowledge back to us. So thank you so much, Judith, for joining us again.
Thank you so much for inviting me again, Lois. I'm so grateful to be back on your show. Thank you very much.
You are so welcome. I was going within to ask for guidance about the areas that were highest aligned for us to be talking about and discussing. And the Lord of the Fourth Ray, Serapis Bey, made himself very known. And he was explaining a little bit about his history and the connections between the White Flame, and that by understanding a little bit more about his story and his experiences, that we gain a greater illumination on the history of the White Flame. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit more about him.
Yeah, Serapis Bey actually is holding a fraction of a White Flame, just a fraction of it. He has held since the fall of Atlantis, when the White Flame was removed from planet Earth. The temple of a White Flame was always the highest temple because it incorporates all the other master rays. You know, you've got 12 master rays, cosmic master rays, and the White Flame literally incorporated. But it also is a flame of the Divine Mother. In other words, it's a Divine Mother flame. It's a flame of purity. It's a flame of truth. It's a flame of integrity. It's a flame of clarity. And it's also the flame that holds the sacred tones and the sacred geometries, the sacred mathematics, the sacred physics, as well as the sacred numbers. And in other words, it's, you know, the musical scale exists of also the sacred maths and the sacred geometries and the numbers. So the tones actually are all toned in with the same frequency as the White Flame, which is your flame of purity. But in Atlantis, when Atlantis fell and the divine masculine took totally over at that stage, the patriarchy took over, the divine feminine was literally sort of like left out of the equation. And at that stage, when she saw what was happening, and with the fall of Atlantis, it was then decided that the White Flame would be removed from planet Earth, and it was taken for safekeeping to Andromeda. But Serapis Bey with Thoth, who also then took the Hermetic teachings to Egypt, to ancient Egypt, Serapis Bey then took a fraction of that flame and held it in his ashram, which is over Luxor in Egypt. So he kept it alive for humanity until such time as the divine feminine could return to planet Earth, and this has now happened. She came back from about 2012 onwards, and she made her presence very much felt. But now we are in the time now where the new Earth is fully birthed. It's there because since the 5th of July last year, the old Earth does not exist anymore. It only exists in holographic form. In other words, like a movie, you know, an old movie that you're still acting in, but that movie is a movie. It's not the reality and the truth. And as a new Earth was born, the White Flame is now, and in the last few months, that White Flame is absolutely anchored in again, because a White Flame also works with a spinal column, because your spine is actually like a tuning fork and a lightning rod. It holds, therefore, the higher frequencies, and it's like it's an antenna that connects you directly to the higher realms and the cosmic energy, the universal knowledge and the universal core, if I may say so, because all the galaxies and star systems belong to universes, And then you have your 12 universes, and within the universes, there's the cosmic. I call that the cosmic, and that's also, but God, actually the source, Father, Mother, God, and the Holy Spirit hold all of creation, and all of creation has that within him. But with that, she's brought the balance back. You see the balance between the masculine and the feminine. And this is a huge shift now. In other words, as a white flame is being returned, it's returned into the spinal column of the earth, because since last year, I was shown that there's not just the spinal column of the earth, which goes down at the 33-degree longitude, which so the whole of Africa literally has it, it holds it. And then it goes into Greece, and it goes up north, and it goes into Antarctica, and of course around the earth, because the earth is a sphere. And as a spinal, I've been working with spinal column since 2009, as I was called. At that stage, I had no idea what I was doing and why I was called to do this. I just did as I was told, as I was guided to do. Intensely working with the energies, and also with the first civilization on Earth, which was Elysium. And then, building the crystal pyramid temple. So the white flame temple was already in existence then, which was a few millions of years ago. And the whole pyramid energy grids and the whole crystalline energy grid was then put in place. And this is an energy grid which actually is like, it's like the whole power system of the earth. And I don't call now power like in governments. I'm talking about electromagnetic power, and the telluric energy fields are held within the web of light. And that was already put down then. So in other words, the crystal pyramid temples were put on these telluric fields, and they were called sacred places. So we had 12 of them. And the white flame was the main one. And then the others were governed by that. In other words, the main, the main priest or the high priest, the high priestess was there in the white flame. So the white flame in subsequent, as of course, what happened with Elysium is the wars of heaven broke out, and then, the earth had to be evacuated, and the earth was thrown out of orbit and also the planet between Jupiter and Mars blew itself up. So this was chaos in heaven, as even galaxies were thrown out. So you can imagine the earth looked then a bit different from what was first created. And then the Lion Kingdom was established, and that was, of course, again over Africa mostly. But you must remember there was no Mediterranean Sea, and there was only one single continent even then. So all the continents were one continent, and that where the Lyrans came in, and because the Lyrans sought refuge in Sirius and Orion, you will find that Sirius, Orion, and Lyra, and also Pleiades, plus Arcturus and Andromeda, and the Bear constellation and Cygnus, etc., play a huge role in the whole history of Earth, because they were part of the first 12 master galaxies. So, but some of those were destroyed during the wars of heaven, so they're not 12 anymore. But what happened is that as the Lion Kingdom was reestablished and was a very high civilization, and also in the seventh dimensional state, they had that state of heaven. But then two brothers fought a war about the throne, and then that was destroyed. Then Avalon rose. Avalon is where France is now, and also and Norway. Britain and Ireland and all this were all part of that main continent. There was no Atlantic Ocean then. And America was actually part of the African continent. So the Earth again looked totally different. You will find that the geologists are now piecing all of this together. They talk about the supercontinent, and they also now, I see the other day was a beautiful map coming up from where America fits into Africa. So they're busy putting all these pieces together, because the earth doesn't lie. And also you will find that botany is the same. You find the same plant species, the same sort of animal species in those countries that were originally together. And with that, Avalon, and it was literally held in that northern part of what was left of the Lion Kingdom. And they were the ones where the Druids first rose. The Druids, and there was also a crystal pyramid of the White Flame. And I always get the idea that is where Iona now is, the island of Iona.
Yes.
And that is a very, very sacred place. But of course, you must also remember that it was part of the mainland then. It was not part of, in other words, there wasn't sea between Ireland and Britain then. And also you had immense crystal pyramids, for instance, where the Orkney Islands are, but the Orkney Islands were attached to Norway. And the islands of Skies and all those, where all the stone circles are, were originally places where you had your sacred temples. Of course, now the landscape has sort of changed in the meantime, like Karnak and also Wales. Wales has got a very interesting sort of connotation in all of this, is that Wales actually was always keeping a certain degree of knowledge within it. And that knowledge was to a certain extent the knowledge of the sciences that were not everybody had access to. That was what Wales did. But you see, the original Druids were the remnant of the high priesthood of Elysium and the Lion Kingdom. So in other words, when the Lion Kingdom was destroyed, they took over that part. But they were called the wizards, okay, because they were known for their ability to manifest things out of thin air, and also for their ability to use these stone circles and the sacred places which they put in place, because all the megalithic sites linked to the Lion Kingdom and also linked to the original creation. So these all link to the different sort of points or node points within the web of light where the telluric energy is present. And so Wales connects directly to Brittany, and Ireland is connected to Brittany. When I was working with the standing stones at Brittany, I was definitely feeling that there's a lot of the sunken lands are just offshore of where Karnak is in that part of France. So there's a lot of that, but that's actually lost to humankind that was once there. And the stronghold of the Druidic kingdom actually lies under the ocean. It is not above ground anymore. The standing circles, etc. So that stronghold was one of the last bastions of Avalon, which fell when Avalon was invaded by the Martians that actually hit underground, and that this was a huge war that went on. And the thing is, they didn't have a means to defend themselves because they were peaceful people. They were in the seventh dimension. They were used to using all their wizardry to bring their to teleport themselves and do all these amazing things that we often have in the stories that have remained from the mythology. But we actually do not, it is so far in human memory that they've forgotten about it. So they actually were destroyed. And when Avalon was destroyed, Lemuria and Mu were already rising, but they were androgynous races. And then as Lemuria was in its heyday, Atlantis rose. But Atlantis was always one notch lower. They were the fifth dimension already. And when Atlantis fell, we fell literally into the seas of forgetfulness. So we were lower than the animal kingdom. And then the whole balance was distorted as the patriarchy took over. Now, this is where the white flame was then removed. And in that the divine feminine withdrew herself, this whole imbalance came in humanity, this whole power play and the misuse of power, and also the whole what we know as all the systems of control and slavery and whatever else was the negative side of what the male dominance sort of like created in that period. So when Serapis Bey was then literally sort of like holding this, and all these places where these sacred places are, if there's an ascended master like Serapis Bey who holds that energy, they always have an ashram in the inner planes. And his is always one of the great disciplinarian, because if you were ever a disciple at his ashram, you would literally, he would put you in groups. And you could not leave that group until you finally acknowledged that everything that irritated you in them, in the other, was present within yourself, so that you would understand that what I see in others is there within me. And I own and literally own everything that is within you that you see in others. So that the heart opens and there's only pure love. Again, the purity. Start standing in your soul purity, stand in the truth of who and what you are, and become that and live it and be that.
Yes, and this oneness too, because the white ray is a combination of all these rays.
Yes.
In frequency terms. And what I love too is that this message, this energy is showing itself in different ways in the nature kingdom, with these sacred white animals being born, and the first white buffalo was born, which is a Lakota prophecy. And then since then there have been many more, and there have been all sorts of white animals being born. And for me, who just loves everything and anything to do with Andara crystals, there are new species of Andara crystals appearing too, which for me feel like they hold the white flame too, because we are ready for this frequency to re-emerge in every way. So I find it's all divinely orchestrated so beautifully.
Definitely, because the new earth is fully born now. In the last few months, the new earth is totally split from the old earth. There's no cords or ties left from that anymore. And that's why these white animals are being born. Here in Africa, we've got white giraffe now being born, white elephants being born. I mean, the white lions were here, but and the other day I saw white buffaloes, that were born. And I mean, this has never happened in Africa, that so many white animals are suddenly born. And to me, that when I asked about it, it said this is a sign, because they are in a much higher frequency band now. And you can see it even with the way that, if you look at the trees now are so vibrantly alive that if you look at, you can actually see the halos around the trees you've never seen before. I was standing in a sort of like to stop my car next to the road, and next to the road is the natural forest. And as I was actually looking at the forest, I was starting, when I'm getting energy fields, I will start shaking from head to toe. I was literally standing there shaking because, and funnily enough, I stood on that spot quite a few times. It never, ever happened. And then I realized that the vibration of that energy that was coming through Mother Earth, and also, where these sacred places are always natural forests, because the trees are wisdom keepers. And they communicate through their roots, and they know everything. It's so interesting, because when we were in the Addo Elephant Park, you see the elephants, if they want to sort of get to get to the sap of the tree, they just literally push a tree over. So that is how strong they are. They literally just uproot them, or they break them because they want to get in, the sap of it. And then what happens is, as the acacias and all these, the thorn shrub or something, if one elephant starts doing that, they actually send warning systems out to all the other trees. So when the elephants come and try to do that, everything becomes bitter. It doesn't taste nice anymore when the elephants leave them. So you see how Mother Nature is totally synchronized, and Mother Nature communicates in ways that we as humans have forgotten, because we do not we ignore the elementals, yet the elementals are the ones that tend the earth. We ignore the fact that animals communicate with each other. Animals also read you. They read your energy. And so fine, I remember that as a child, my dad always said that. He said to me, you know what, if you show fear to an animal, that animal will go bite you. If you show aggression to that animal will remember that and will come back to you in form, because they remember you if you ever hurt or harmed them. They will not forget it. And I've never had problems with animals, because I naturally open my heart to them and communicate from the heart center. And that is what the animals do. They actually read your energy fields. They can sense you before they can, like the elephants, they can't see very properly, but their whole senses will sense you, and your whole energy fields. So, it's always that we are busy, coming into communication again, and also understanding that all of life is sacred.
Yes. And I've been enjoying your posts so much recently as well, which are really strengthening the messages about our inner connection and how we are evolving, and the opportunities that are available to us now as we go within deeper. And also, I'm finding it very interesting as well, the connection with the Elohim, the masters of light in form, and finding things that are connecting with a white flame, and also looking at materialization, light into form, and now the opportunities that we have now, working with the Elohim, working with the white flame to create these new realities. And for many of us, we've seen the 222 codes everywhere. We notice them now, because it is the time to build the new, and to build it from within and in our realities. And so I'm finding it very fascinating, this really strong frequency of the Elohim coming in to assist. Have you found that?
Elohim, of course, are co-creators with God. They're the ones that help co-creating. And Elohim, Purity and Estrella are the ones that are in charge of the white flame. It's interesting, because what they're always showing to me is that the animal kingdom and nature kingdom has already been lifted into the new earth. That's why, as I say, these white animals are being born. Now, you must remember that Estrella and Purity are working to purify everything. In other words, whatever is there in the remnants of the white of the earth and what we ever created is being purified to the T. And this December is actually that is really sort of like build momentum now, because 2022 is one of those Rubicon years where we literally find that all the muck will come up, because it needs to come up now, because it needs to be released. And all the things that we ever did, to strip Mother Earth and to literally strip her of her minerals, to strip her of whatever else. And that is going to come to the fore now, because we have already got the souls in place that can bring the new technology to humanity, that can bring the new know-how to humanity, so that we do not strip Mother Earth and we do not pollute her. So that when we start co-creating now in the new earth, we will not use fossil fuel anymore. We will start using that same telluric energy which is in the earth and which we can actually create, like Nikola Tesla actually demonstrated. We will start using that energy and create from that energy, because even the spacecraft of the intergalactic fleet work with the same principles. So it's not that we didn't have it, because in the beginning we did have motherships and we did have spacecraft. We knew this. It's in the old Vedic scriptures, they actually show the real machine that they used. That's a UFO. It's not because we didn't have it. It's because we forgot it. And then because we sank in the sea of forgetfulness, we had to sort of start civilization all over again. And then we started to create everything that makes noise and everything that sort of like jars, your energy fields, because there's nothing that jars your energy field so much than noisy equipment. Or the other day, I was sitting on my balcony and there was this pilot in the jet and he was doing all sorts of tricks. But for myself, the noise, that these jolly airplanes make, that's noise pollution to the highest degrees. And I look at the UFOs, they don't make any noise. They're completely noiseless. So you see, if you start working in harmony, and you yourself, but you can't create harmony outside yourself if everything inside of you is churning. You can't. And that is where the white flame comes in. She purifies you. She works into everything within you that now needs to be released, that you need to bring up into the open so that the white flame can lift it out of your energy field, out of you, so that you can finally forgive yourself and forgive everything that's ever happened. And with it comes a sacred heart opening, because when you start getting to the state of unconditional love, which the mother holds, you cannot condemn anybody anymore. You can't judge anybody. You can't react in the ways you did before, because you know that everything you judge it within yourself. But every time you point a finger, all those fingers point back at you. And literally, we created the old earth because we allowed all that to happen. Often turning a blind eye because we didn't want to get involved in that. Mm-hmm. So now that blind eye is opening, and the all-seeing eye is now appearing and saying, okay, I don't want to create that anymore. That's the past. I release it. I forgive it. I let it go. And what I'm always told every morning is get into that state where you are in beautiful balance and harmony. And you can bring the white flame into all your energy fields and in and around you. And you can start to co-creating with the heart of love, filled with love, so that you become aware of every thought that you think, of every word that you speak, and of every single action that you take. And perhaps just for one moment, always think to yourself, or sit down just quietly and say, okay, if I do this, will it actually be for the greater good of all? Or am I doing this for self-service? Or am I going to harm anybody if I put this into form and being? You see, once we actually start to become conscious of everything, conscious of exactly what we're putting out there, what we're radiating out there, we will be very careful with the words that we use, because words have power. And words can become like daggers and can hurt somebody so much that they actually are wounded within themselves because of those words that came out of your mouth. Just like you get wounded if other people put those in you, if you accept it, of course. But when we start understanding and this is what the new children are teaching us. And because they're pure, they don't have any karma. From 1994, the souls that have come in have got no karma with the earth, most of them. There are few of them that have. But these kids read your mind. They read you telepathically from the minute they're born. And these kids have a very hard time of understanding how you can think this here, but your mouth says something else, and your action says something else. And it's going to make us, the white flame is going to make us conscious of everything now. Mm-hmm. It's going to make us conscious. Are your thoughts and what you speak and what you put out there, are they one and the same? Are they in the form of one?
You share so beautifully, Judith, because it is our own illumination from within ourselves. And it is a time of illumination, as you say, where we will be. And it's all so connected with the white flame. It's just this time for this frequency to re-emerge. And Another message that came through was about King Solomon and his connection to and also the Ark of the Covenant. And I was interested because you've spoken before, and you've spoken with Todd Medina about this too, and I love your conversations with him. And you were speaking about, in a way, the white flame being a technology in a way, a technology that was used. And so you
the spiraling energy, that's the telluric energy, the spiral. Yes. That's why you have a spiral everywhere in the ancient sites. You can go, that symbol of a spiral is everywhere. Now, it was not just a decoration that was put there. You've got it in Newgrange in Ireland. You've got it in all the sacred sites in England, yes. In Wales. All the standing stones will have a spiral on it. When I was in Delphi, the spiral is literally there, right? Everywhere you look. And Delphi holds one of those huge telluric energy fields. You have it where the pyramids are. You will find that symbol is everywhere where the pyramids are. And most people just say, oh, that's a spiral. It's a pretty thing. It's not. The spiral was always indicated that the ancient knew how to use the spiraling energy, the Kundalini energy. But it's not, you see, you have your Kundalini energy in the earth, as I said, in these places which are sacred and node, but you can also create that, with certain electromagnetic fields that you can actually tap into and start using. Wizardry that the Druid used was nothing else but that, because they knew how to use this energy to manifest into form and to demanifest. And it had to do with sound as well, because your tones were one of the first things. The tones actually created everything. It says that in the Bible. It says it in the Vedic scriptures. So, that's why when the sacred tones that the white flame actually holds, you have that within it. But I was, for instance, when I was in Egypt and we went to Luxor, here comes Luxor again. We went there at nighttime, and, Luxor is overwhelming to the senses because, the statues that are there they are tall. They must be, you feel like a little ant, against these things. You say, well, how the heck did they put these things up? When everywhere there's pieces at Luxor and Karnak of these things that they don't know how to put together again. And there was this one finger, just this one finger, and it was taller than me. And it was perfectly carved. Even the nail was perfectly carved. That's one finger of those statues. Now, it must be giants that put those together, and the Lion Kingdom were the giants, by the way. They were way over 20 feet, 20 meters tall. Now, as I went into this, I started, we were going into what the holies of holies was. But I first stood there and I just got the essence of Luxor, because I was, I never go into these ancient sites or any site, even out into the countryside, without ever calling the guardians and keepers in. And I always make a point of asking permissions to enter here. And if you are at a sacred site, it is a must, because they will not reveal what is there until you start asking for permission. And then they will actually read your intent, and they will look if your intent is pure. That's where the white flame comes in again. If this is revealed to you, what will you do with that information? Will you use it for self-purpose, for self-empowerment, to get more power or whatever? Or are you going to use this for the greater good? In any case, so on that night, the place was filled with tourists. But as we went into this part where the holies of holies is, the thing that came up with me was an Ark of the Covenant. And for myself, now what the heck has got the Ark of the Covenant got to do with Luxor? But then I knew that Serapis Bey had his seat there, because I felt his presence very much. So even as the boat we were on was moving, down the Nile and into this area, I was fascinated, because there's a Valley of the Kings and all these places there. And, the Valley of the Kings is the most sacred and holy mountain, you know. Later on, I actually realized that connects directly to Jerusalem. So Luxor connects to Jerusalem. And but I didn't know it at that time. But I just sort of went, and then that moment I knew that in the holies of holies, there's the Ark of a Covenant as well. And then I was shown there were more than one. And I for myself, okay, this is very interesting, because I for myself, okay, you know, sometimes I just file this in the back of my neck, my head, and I just sort of think, okay, it's interesting. I don't know what's going on, and you just go on with your life. But it's so interesting that that as I was now seeing the white flame return this year, and literally pulsating up that spinal column. And you must remember that these temples in Egypt lie directly on the 33-degree longitude line, and they connect directly with all the sacred sites in Africa. And again, you won't have access to those sites if you are impure. Here in Africa, they are very, very much still protected, much more than in Europe, Well, in any case, I felt that intensely again when I was at the Sphinx, and then because a miracle happened at the Sphinx as well. And then when we went into the king's chamber, and I was lying in that, what they say is a sarcophagus, and it was also the same thing with these sarcophaguses, and also, you know, underneath where the step pyramid is, but it's the pyramid of Uma. You know, that was our first day in Egypt where we went on tour. I mean, we have to crawl into this place that the pyramid doesn't stand anymore. It's sort of just half of it. And I mean, I just sort of got to what is supposed to be a sarcophagus, and I started toning. The tones just came through me. And at that moment, I knew that this was anything but the burial chamber, because you literally get lifted in a much higher state when you are there. And the same thing happened in the king chamber. And I was when we all lied down and they sang over everybody that was in there. But the acoustics in the king's chamber is out of this world. You can't explain that, you don't know. But I just knew that this was not used either for a burial, because I was shaking from head to toe. Because I could sense the energy of that telluric energy literally ripping through me. And then I left that, and in the last few weeks, a few months, the Ark of a Covenant kept coming up. And I thought myself, now what the heck has got the Ark of a Covenant got to do with the crystal pyramid temples? And what has it got to do, whatever? And in that, I was starting to have to do a lot of energy work into Egypt and also into Jerusalem. And then I started to connect the dots, between how all these energy fields come together and whatever was there. But it's so interesting. But still, and then I was given that the ark actually held the white flame, that energy of the white flame, which is a creative energy with which you could literally create anything that you wish to. But with the white flame, but also the tones that you use, the sacred sound energy in that. And then I started to understand that why it is written in the Bible, why if somewhere you couldn't touch it, and only so that sort of like a high priest could go in once a year. And I always wondered about that, because even the people that at one stage somebody did something and they were all killed, around this ark or whatever, but was obviously still working at that stage. And so I started doing research on that of myself. Well, this is interesting. So one day I was just sort of like, opening my YouTube channel, because I'm just finding it, when suddenly this Gaia video comes up. And I thought to myself, oh, this is interesting. I would just, sort of just listen. And the first thing this guy said, that sarcophagus, the so-called sarcophagus in the king's chamber, actually held the Ark of a Covenant. Because if you actually look at the measurement of that, the Ark of a Covenant fits exactly into it. And then also, Akhenaten, who was the king that brought back the pharaoh, or that brought back the idea of oneness, of unity. He was a high initiate of the mystery schools in Egypt. And they held that knowledge of the white flame. They still held it within the secret teachings of the inner teachings. You must remember, with those mystery schools, you had your layers. You had the one, the novice that didn't know anything, and then you had the masters that were running the whole show that knew things that this one didn't know. And Akhenaten was one of the very highest of the high. They held that, and still the one. And when the Black Magi started, he literally took them out of power there, and he reestablished the law of one. And then, of course, they were persecuting him at that stage because they were out of jobs now and whatever. And with that, he became Moses, and he took this Ark of a Covenant. He took out of Egypt. He took it out of the king's chamber and out of Egypt. So the Ark of a Covenant was not given to the Jews in Sinai, but they took it with them. And the same Ark eventually ended up in the Temple of Jerusalem. But in the meantime, if you go and look in Africa, which is very interesting, the Ark of a Covenant also starts coming up, not just in Jerusalem, not just in Egypt, but it comes up in Mount Kenya, it comes up here in South Africa and in Zimbabwe. And they call themselves the Lost Tribes of Israel, but they still have that white flame and the Ark of a Covenant.
Oh, it's so interesting. It's so interesting, yeah. And I've read and seen about those connections with Africa as well. You've mentioned before that you were told that it was now you were sort of given permission to start teaching about the white flame. Can you? So when did you begin to understand about the white flame, and how did it develop for you to come to be the time to teach?
By the way, I just want to say to you, they have found that there's an ark also buried in Wales.
Have they?
Yes, there's a guy there that actually that I watched in Wales, and I just want to tell you, because when I was in Egypt, we're just going back to Egypt. I'll answer you just now. Yes. When I was in Egypt, I asked, these hieroglyphs. I started listening to our guides and so on, and I looked at these hieroglyphs and thought to myself, there's something not happy here. It's not gelling, So what is not gelling? So eventually I spoke up and I said, how do you know that what you are interpreting in these hieroglyphs is actually the truth? I said, how do you know what language the Egyptians spoke? And of course, that just flabbergasted the guide. He didn't know how to answer me. I said, well, they didn't speak Arabic because you're speaking Arabic. So for sure, they didn't speak that. And it just came naturally. It wasn't because I was trying to discredit him. It just came naturally because my gut feeling was telling me there's something not happy here. Yeah. And this same guy in Wales, and one who is still of a Druidic order, have brought out a book now where they use the ancient Welsh language. And they have a dictionary now to decipher the hieroglyphs in Egypt, because the same language that the Welsh use is the same language that was used in Egypt.
You give me goosebumps, Judith. This is incredible. But the Welsh language is a very ancient language.
The ancient Welsh language is the key to the Egyptian hieroglyphs. And there comes your connection between Egypt and Wales and Ireland very much to the fore.
There's so many stories and clues in the Welsh traditions as well. Things like boats of beings arriving on the coast of Anglesey with magical powers, and the people on the land had never seen anything like it, which makes me think of Atlantis. And then there are legends about these giant beings. Mm-hmm. And also I'm thinking about the connection in Ireland too. There's a story about an Egyptian Pharaoh coming to Ireland. So there's all this, because of course, again, as you say, the land was different. We're talking about eons of time where the land was all one. And so we can't really comprehend. But there are
and
definite...
They found redhead. In the pharaohs, they found redhead.
Yes, yes.
The same, and they're actually the same DNA as they find in Ireland and in Wales and the Celtic races. Because they were actually not the Celtic, they used to be the giants that were there. And there are now books, there's a book out now from Hugh Newman about the giants in Britain and Ireland. Wow. So you see how the truth is coming out now. It's busy coming out because we have now the technology to look at these sites from above, which we couldn't do before. We have got drones where we can fly over these fields and see the whole picture. And if you stand on the ground, you can't see the whole pattern. You know, it's the same in South Africa, where you see all these stone circles, you don't know what the heck are they doing here. And the archaeologists say they're cattle kraals, but good heavens, how can a cow or anybody jump over this whole wall to get into a kraal that hasn't got a door? I mean, it doesn't make sense. How do you put a whole sort of herd of animals in there? You can't. They all have to jump over this wall to get into there. And so on. And I mean, and then when they started looking at them from the air, what do they find? That these make somatic patterns, sound patterns. So do you see how they knew about the spiraling energy that we have forgotten? They knew how to use it. They knew how to utilize it. We just forgotten about it.
Yes. And I remember I used to work in radio, creating radio programs, and going to one of the sacred sites in Wales to go and see a tomb with a stone with a spiraling. And knowing that there was something sacred and there was so much wisdom in this symbol. And speaking to an archaeologist for the program, and he was saying, like you mentioned, it's just a pretty thing. It's just a symbol that they drew because that just came naturally to them. It's just a squiggle, but knowing, no, there's so much more here, but we...
No,
yes,
no. When I was in Greece and Egypt, I would go and touch the stones. If you go and touch the stones, you can feel that energy in there. And even the Cyclopean's walls, you know, it's so funny because in Greece, you know, the first thing I always did is took my hands and put them on the walls, you know. And then everybody was with me, of course, started doing this. And we were at Messina, was one of the places. And it was about 4:00. And then that's right, because it was already then into sort of like the autumn season. They sort of closed the museum a bit earlier. So we just said, well, rush through this, you know, quickly and whatever. And first spring, I wasn't even interested to go anywhere. I was at the Cyclopean wall, and I was literally sort of tapping into the whole energy of the place if I just threw these rocks, because rocks record everything. Everything on earth is recorded in rocks. If you would just start understanding that, you know, you would actually understand that when they put a symbol on it and there's a spiral, it means that this rock actually is part of that same telluric energy and carries that telluric energy field. You won't just go and say this is a rock, you know. If you understand it's a live being, and that live being is recording something there. So we were literally doing this. And then, of course, you know, the whistles went out. They want to close the museum. So when we got to the gate now, the curator of the museum is standing there with a big smile. He says, you know what, because it was all the ladies, you see, that were with me in the group that were doing this. He said, you know, you ladies, and now he looks at me because, you know, our guide was standing next to him, very nice man. And he had shown that I was the leader of the group. And he said, you know, I just want to tell you, I had some of these tourists looking at all of you there at the Cyclopean walls. He said, they're saying, what on earth are those ladies doing there? And he said, you know what? I answered them. I said, they're tapping into the energy fields. And I said, thank you. Oh. It was just so beautiful. But you see, and that is what what the white flame now is going to do is it's going to awaken, it's already awakening all the sacred centers of the earth. If you go to these sacred centers now, you will start tapping into a totally new energy field there, which is now being activated because it's time that we start accessing the information that these fields hold again. We could not access it before because we did not have that consciousness to do it, and also the purity of heart, not to start abusing that power that is in these sites. And that is where the white flame comes in. It is not only purifying everything, but it is lifting us into that consciousness state, which is the Christ consciousness, because the white flame holds the Christ consciousness. That Christ consciousness brings you to a state where you can stand in the fullness of your soul mastery again, the truth of who and what you are, and the purity of who you are. And then you can start accessing the galactic knowledge, the universal knowledge again. You can start going to these places and start accessing that energy field like I do. Stand on these sites, I will immediately sort of access the information of that site. It will just bring fruit to me. That's why I will start toning there or whatever. Or I will start saying, okay, this was there, that was there, because but you see, if, as I say, don't go into these places without asking permission. Every site where are secrets held or sacred knowledge held will not access itself like the door of sesame unless you come with a pure heart and you start asking permission to move into it. You know, a lot of these sites have just been closed down and sealed off when these wars broke out, because that knowledge was so sacred and so amazing that we will not have access to that ever again until we reach that state of purity again in the original creation that we were. And this is where the huge rebirth of humanity is now happening. You cannot step into the new earth with all the programming of the old earth, all the fast old belief systems, all the old fears, all the old things. And that is why you literally, when the white flames moves into you and you start working it, even the cells and the DNA strands of your body are changing and are tuned into the white flame, as are your atoms and the molecules and the electrons. Your whole energy fields literally get lifted in a much higher state. If you try working with the white flame and you are not pure, what happens is you will disintegrate at a lot of levels until you are pure again. It's like a diamond is formed under huge pressure. So everything will come up, but you need to release so that you can be pure enough to handle that Christedness. And that's one of the things why when Jeshua was here and he was trained to take on that role of bringing the Christ energy for the first time back into our consciousness again 2,000 years ago, he was a high initiate. He was never meant to be a king of the Jews in the form that we think he was. He was meant, that is a misunderstanding that his disciples had, some of them. They thought that he's going to be the kings and they're going to all live in palaces and things, which wasn't the truth. What he literally anchored in was the open heart again of humanity and the true teachings that he was trying to come. And of course, the teachings later got warped, by misunderstandings, misinterpretations, because they could not access that high degree of knowledge again, you see. But he opened the door. He opened the door with Mary Magdalene, who was also high priestess in her own way. And she had that feminine knowledge of the white flame that she was trained in. And together, they actually brought the higher Christedness into form and being because they enhanced each other. And in that, they opened the door for what is now happening. And that's where Serapis Bey comes in, because he held that too. Because Jeshua was part of the mystery schools in Egypt as much as Mary Magdalene was. And Egypt has always been a place where that whole, after the fall of Atlantis, Egypt sort of like held it with India and with the Himalayas and certain pockets in humanity. And also in France, it was there. And there was always pockets of these, and Delphi was one of those places. Before a lot of them actually had to go so deep underground that that we think they don't exist anymore. But the thing is that a lot of those souls that held that chose at that stage, because of intense persecution, that they would not be in embodiment anymore. So what they did is they just withdrew the energy of a body, the physical body, but they're still the guardians and the keepers of those places, you see? So that is why if you come to a place and you start honoring them, you are honoring the sacredness of that place and the sacredness of those who held the teachings at that place.
Thank you so much, Judith. Thank you for being such a bright light of illumination for all of us, and for sharing your wisdom so generously. Thank you so much.
It's a calling in itself. That's fine. And I can just say, I'm very much. It's a journey that I've had since 2009, where I started working with the spinal column. I was seeing the temples of the White Flame, which, by the way, are offshore here where I live originally. And, so interesting how, in that stage when I was doing this, I had no idea, why I was drawing lines on Africa and why I was actually sort of doing all those things. And it's interesting that when I was starting to do more sort of about the White Flame now, that I needed to bring this to humanity and start teaching about it, that I open a book one day and out comes this thing. Sometimes the script will just jump out at you. And it says that the White Flame is held by the goddess of purity, who actually has her etheric retreat on Madagascar. And then I thought to myself, wow, now I understood that when I was called to go do Madagascar, everybody here, all the travel agents said to me, no, you cannot go to Madagascar because it's too primitive there, you'll get lost there, and you as a female can't go alone there. And I was for myself, why can't I go alone to an island, I might not know the lingua franca, but I'm quite sure somebody will always find me that can speak English or whatever. And then I went to Mauritius and Reunion instead. But when I was reading that, I thought to myself, because that's exactly where I always drew these pyramid temples, and I knew that they linked up to Egypt, etc. And then I thought to myself, okay, it's very interesting. And you know what is even more interesting is how when I started teaching about the White Flame, how the information would just suddenly appear to me when I wasn't looking at it. So what happened is I get somebody from America that comes to me with a soul reading, you see. And one of the questions he said, I was called from America to go to Kenya, to go and meet the leader, the high priest of this tribe that's in Kenya. And they actually, whatever, it was a whole story about why he had to go to. And he said when he was in initiation there, this high priest told him to get hold of me. Okay. So I was well, what the heck? I don't know anybody in Kenya. It is this high priest that told him to get hold of me. But it's so interesting what came through on that reading. I can't remember because I can't recall it. But that actually made me to go and sort of like for myself, I need to go a bit deeper into this. What is this? What came through? And sure enough, they the tribe that still believe that they have an ark, but they're also this leader of this group actually stated publicly on a video that isn't at YouTube. Interestingly, you see when I did the research, now it comes up that the pharaohs in Egypt could not be initiated unless they made the journey down from Egypt to Mount Kenya. And then they had to spend a night in Monkinia, in somewhere of a sacred place, where the Ark of the Covenant was held. And only then could they actually be initiated as the Pharaoh of Egypt.
Wow.
It is so amazing at how the information then starts coming to the fore. And this tribe has kept that under wraps for how many thousands of years?
Wisely so as well.
Yeah. So you see that when you are ready to receive information, it will come to you. You don't need to actually go and beg the heavens for it. It will come to you because you are ready for that information. And I believe that because when I was said, go and teach the White Flame, I said to myself, oh my goodness, what on earth am I going to teach? And as it all started coming to the fore, I understood that this teaching is so ancient, what we're now tapping into, that I can understand also why I was called to France and actually had to go on the path of Mary Magdalene, and understood that she also had access to that teaching of the White Flame and what was always called the Book of Love, the Qatar Book of Love. And I actually had to give my life for that in France, to safeguard this type of knowledge, you see, for the greater of generations. And I was always asking, what is it that I died for? But now I can understand, why it was so very precious and why it was so preserved, that it wouldn't fall into the wrong hands and also not abused at that stage, because humanity just didn't have that knowledge or the knowledge to actually start accessing or the purity. And to me, that is the greatest gift of this time, is that we now have free will and choice of whether we're going to repeat the old things in the old world, the old wars, the old divisions, the old whatever happened before. Or are we going to be able to step out of this and into the new earth now in a totally new manner, be purified and reborn, so that we can step into a fullness of our soul mastery and then access all that information again and use it for the greater good, not only for the humanity, but also for the animal kingdom, the birds, the trees, the oceans, everything. And when we start applying that, the pollutions will be solved. That everything will be solved, because that new earth is already there in form and being. It's for us now to start reclaiming our birthright and reclaiming our mastership. But you will not be allowed in there if everything in you still has to be resolved. You need to do the inner work now and really release all that is blocking you, that is still hindering you, that is still tying you to the old earth, and literally to let go of all attachments. We cannot take any of those attachments or baggage with us.
This is such a beautiful message, and so timely in this sacred passageway that we are going through now too. So I'd like to thank you so much once more for joining us and for sharing your wisdom so beautifully, Judith. Thank you so much, and I wish you a wonderful sacred passageway and Christmas season.
Thank you. You too. Lots of love.